The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 131.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us on the EL. Today we have Rob Galford, author of The Trusted Advisor. I think you guys are really going to like this interview. It's a, I say older book. I feel like 2000 wasn't that long ago, but it was 15 years ago now. But this book has excellent reviews, and you'll know by Rob's ability, his brevity in this interview is unbelievable, but his way of actually really taking you through the book. He really has the entrepreneur in mind, the busy entrepreneur in mind when he does this interview. So without further ado, let's bring on Rob. Welcome, Rob, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thanks very much for having me. Nice to be here.
Before we take a deep dive into your book, will you take just a moment to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you personally?
Sure. My name is Rob Galford, as you know, and I am one of the co-authors of The Trusted Advisor, which we'll be talking about today, along with The Trusted Leader and Your Leadership Legacy, plus another book coming along. I spend my time writing, teaching, consulting, and advising on topics of trust and trust-related elements for people who are running businesses at senior levels.
Excellent.
That's what I do.
So, Rob, thank you for sharing that. Now, let's jump right into that book that you mentioned, The Trusted Advisor, which was made available for purchase back in 2000. You and I were talking about how that's, I guess it kind of depends on where you're coming from. That's either seems like 1,000 years ago or seems like 5 years ago.
Right.
For some of us,
we generally refer to it as a brand new classic. And I think that's probably the best way of thinking about it. It seems to have some life to it. So.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And so, Rob, we're going to move quickly, but we're really going to cover the top questions that our listener/future reader would like to get answered.
Gotcha.
And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing The Trusted Advisor?
Got it. Our inspiration there was very much the fact that we saw a lot of people who were very good at what they did in individual jobs, individual professions, in their individual companies. But there were a lot of very good people. So what differentiated them? The ones who were truly, truly successful was the question that really we wanted to focus on. What made the difference for someone who was not just one lawyer, but a great lawyer who really had a tremendous following? Not just one business person, but somebody who really had a disproportionate market share. And our pursuit was, our question was, what was really the key differentiator? And where we came down was it wasn't about their competence in their task or their role or even their product or service. It was about their ability to build trust with their clients and their customers. And that was the fundamental inspiration behind the book. What made them different as extraordinary trust builders?
So I'm glad you said it like that, because I'm going to ask you, this next question is me asking you the same thing, but about your book. What makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
When we started to look at this topic, and where we got brought into it was with a group of professionals who were trying to figure out how to extend their reach in terms of increasing sales, increasing client relationships, increasing numbers of customers. And there's a tremendous amount out there on pure selling, good books on strategic selling and relationship selling and those kinds of things. But for us, we wanted to take it to a different and higher level, something past what I would refer to as, they're the stages of product-based sales or service-based sales. Then people say, oh, it's not about the product. It's about solutions or solution selling. Well, it's not just about that. It's also about relationships. And of course, it's not just about products or services. It's not just about solutions. It's not just about relationships. Those make you good, but not extraordinarily good. The one that makes you extraordinarily good is that fourth dimension, which is trust. So what are the things that really will make you a more trusted advisor to clients and customer, was a differentiator from just having a relationship or being a solutions provider. That was the differentiator. Trust-based relationships last longer. There's more price elasticity. There's deeper relationships. They go on for a longer time. People buy more. And that's what we were interested in doing. That was the differentiator for us.
Rob, how do you suggest the reader engage with your book? Is this a book they can jump in and jump out based on the information that they need at that moment? Or has this really been designed to be read from front to back?
Well, I think most authors would say every word in there is a pearl of wisdom. How could you not read everything from cover to cover? But the truth of the matter is there are a couple of key concepts. One is to think about the progression of the relationship that we have, where we may start out as a service provider or a product provider, and what does that ladder look like when we go from a service provider to a valued resource all the way to a trusted advisor or a trusted partner. That would be, and you can dive right in on that. You can dive right in, for example, on understanding that we really view trust as something of an equation or as a formula. I mean, I was quantitatively trained, so to deal with a topic as squishy and as amorphous as trust didn't come naturally to me. I had to have some quantitative proof and some quantitative elements to it, some real analytical underpinnings to it. And we identified so we thought about trust really in the form of an equation, a trust equation. Now, I'm also working on an equation for love, but for the moment, starting with trust is probably a good thing to do. And there are 4 elements there that you can explore: credibility plus reliability plus intimacy, an unusual word for the business world, all reduced or divided, and we put it in an equation form, really. Credibility plus reliability plus intimacy, all reduced or diminished by the other person's perception of your self-interest. And so you can go straight in and look at the formula and see how it exactly applies to the economics of almost every business in terms of customer retention and customer acquisition. And the costs of customer acquisition are so high for a new customer, yet the costs of selling or adding products or services to an existing customer really are what keep you in business. So that was the fundamental element there, to be able to jump into people and say, okay, think about where you are on the, let's call it that trust ladder. Those 4 elements of trust: credibility, reliability, intimacy, all reduced by the other person's perception of your self-interest. And then finally, you can dive in and say, okay, even if I buy that, what are the things I have to keep in mind? And there we have, in a nutshell, the 5 skills that we identified as the people who are the real trust builders. They have an ability to engage people to open, to listen to people and what they say, whether it is spoken or unspoken. They have an ability to frame issues in a meaningful way that clients would, and customers or potential customer would say, yep, that's the problem, that's the issue. They have an ability to help people envision what might be, the sense of possibility, and then they actually have an ability to gain a commitment, to get people to actually do what they know they should be doing. So engage, listen, frame, envision, commit. Those are the skills of trusted advisors and trust builders. The ability to get clients and customers to open, to listen to them, to frame their issues. They say, yep, you've got it, you understand my problem. To give them a sense of possibility and to get them to actually move. So if those are the skills, the only other elements in there I would suggest that people could dive in and really get something out of are the tools. And what are those key tools that great trust builders have? And they are things like making sure that you have a level of a connection with someone. And we talk about the contact contract, even as basic as keeping to a time contract, keeping to schedule, keeping to an agenda. And then perhaps the most important one that I would point to is where relationships really, and trust is really built and where they are made. And we refer to that as naming it and claiming it. And that's, how do we address particularly thorny, difficult, or uncomfortable situations that might arise or have arisen, and not leave them as part of the great unspoken. We always read about the moose on the table, the elephant in the room, the whatever it is, the animal in the parlor that shouldn't be there, the elephant in the room, whatever you want to call it there. For us, it was getting past that, because that's where trust really gets built, when you can deal with those really difficult situations. So what we did is we described and developed this tool called naming it and claiming it. The point being, if you name it, just to identify it, you may not be able to solve it, but you can claim it as something that is an indicator you care about this relationship, and you can work on it. So that ability to name it and claim it is the one skill that people who've read this book, and as you and I had talked about earlier, we've been blessed by the fact that our sales have been pretty strong over these years, 250, 300,000 people, and they always come back and talk to us about name it and claim it. This ability to uncover and deal with uncomfortable issues. And that to me is the biggest takeaway that you can dive right in on and go for.
Well, that was actually my next question. You might be able to take a deeper dive into that part. And the question I'll ask it anyway, just for the listener
Right.
that's taking a look. But if the reader could only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, or everything that you just laid out for us, what would you want that to be?
It would certainly be naming it and claiming it. And there are three factors there, three things that help us in naming it and claiming it. One is acknowledging the difficulty of raising the issue. This is not an easy thing to talk about generally. The second is to accept some responsibility for raising it. And sometimes even have to apologize to say, look, I'm sorry if I got to raise an uncomfortable issue here, or forgive me if this seems out of line, but I just got to ask it. Boom, and then ask it. Or, it really seems to me that what's getting in the way here is you've got, an obsession with price and it's not about quality. Or there's something that you're not comfortable in telling me about what's really going on. We have so much of this in our lives right now that, for example, how many times have we been to a restaurant? The meal is, it's okay. But the waiter or waitress comes up to you and says, is everything okay? And you sort of say, yeah, it's fine. And what's really going on is, I'll never go back there again. This was wrong, that was wrong, this was wrong. And so how do we get people to tell the truth to one another, even when the topics are not easy? That's the differentiator of trust.
Do you have a favorite quote from your book?
Do I have a favorite quote from the book? I guess I really do have what I would say. Again, you're asking the author's question. Do I have, is there a single favorite quote? I guess the favorite quote from the book, or the favorite concept that I would really strongly introduced from the book, is the one that says there are no win-lose relationships or lose-win relationships. There are only either win-win relationships or lose-lose relationships. If you can't establish that mutually acceptable relationship, you got to move on. And I think that would be the thing that would be the fundamental quote that I would put in there.
Excellent.
Either you go win-win or you go lose-lose. You can't go win-lose. You can't lose-lose-win.
We like to put the quotes in our show notes, which we put at the elpodcast.com, because quotes are something that it's hard to move on to the next question.
Right.
Usually you like to think about a quote, so we'll put it in there so people can go back and actually reflect.
And I think the key quote for us is, the truth is there are very few people who have the capacity to relate to everyone. There are going to be cases where the glue doesn't stick. And you got to figure out, what are you going to do about that one?
So, Rob, if there was only one book you could recommend to our listeners based on the way it's impacted your life, maybe even created a paradigm shift for you, what would that book be?
Other than The Trusted Advisor, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here I guess we're giving props to other authors. And there is one that very much comes to mind. It was a book written by a guy who was actually a science editor of The Economist, probably 15, 20 years ago at least. The book's called The Origins of Virtue. The Origins of Virtue. And the author's name is Ridley, Ridley. And Ridley basically looked at the animal kingdom and said, what are the most successful organizations, businesses, societies almost in the animal kingdom, and what can we learn from them about those organizations, businesses, societies, civilizations that are most likely to endure in the human environment? And he identified four things. He says those are areas where the rules are clear, they're considered to be fair, there are consequences for behavior, both positive and negative, and people say it's decent, it's nice, it's a reasonable set of rules. And so can we create organizations and entities where the rules are clear, they're considered fair, there are consequences for doing the right thing, and you get dinged for doing the wrong thing, and people say, hey, it's a decent place. And if you can provide that, then I think it really links closely to the whole trust question.
So that's the first time that book's been recommended, so I appreciate that. I always love to look at new books. And Rob, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for listeners to not only get more information on you, but also on your book, The Trusted Advisor?
Right. And also, if I can put as I had mentioned, not only do we have Trusted Advisor and Trusted Leader, which was an in-business one, and Leadership Legacy, the last book is one that's going to be coming out in the fall of 2015, and the topic on that one is the unintentional sabotage that goes on in organizations, and we're very excited about that one. And the best place to find out more about me and more about those kinds of books is at the website, which is centerforleading.com. That's all run together as one word. Center, CENTER, FOR, leading, LEADING.com.
Excellent. Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this book with us. And I'm hoping that you can come back next fall and share the newest edition with us as well. Not the newest edition, I guess the newest book with us
you
as
bet.
well.
Wade, it would be my pleasure. Happy to do it.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you want more information on Rob or his book, The Trusted Advisor, check out the show notes at the elpodcast.com. And if you want a chance to win this book, become a VIP at that same website, the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.